Hello, welcome to an episode of Salty Saturdays with Maple Madness. I'm your host, Sasha. Today we're going to be tackling the criminal justice system as a whole, and it might get a little bit heavy, but it needs to be addressed. So let's get into it. First, let's look at Bills C-5 and C-75, the Trudeau era laws that promise to fix systemic inequities, cut court backlogs, and replace punishment with hugs and rehabilitation. How noble, right? Except the results have been a violent crime wave and something straight out of a dystopian nightmare. Two-tiered justice, where your skin color or sob story or your identity gets you a lighter sentence than the average Canadian would ever dream of. This episode is going to be raw and unfiltered because the stories deserve it. So maybe get yourself a drink, get yourself comfy, and let's jump into it. Back in 19, Bill C-75 baked in a principle of restraint, which is a fancy way of saying release them unless you can prove they'll literally off someone tomorrow. It turned heaps of serious indictable offenses into hybrid ones with baby penalties. Then, in 2022, Bill C-5 axed mandatory minimums for firearms offenses, drug trafficking, and more. Judges suddenly became social workers, handing out house arrest for armed robbery or assault because of equity. Proponents cheered about reducing over-incarceration for Indigenous and Black Canadians by factoring in cultural context. Translation: lighter sentences if your backstory checks the right diversity boxes. Deterrence? Who needs it when we can virtue signal, right? Catch and release isn't just a slogan that Pierre Poilievre uses. It's actually happening. Violent crime in Canada has increased 50% since 2015, according to Statistic Canada, including 116% increase in gun crimes during the same period, with repeat violent offenders increasingly being released back into the community on bail. That means we, citizens, get to deal with them. This is part of the problem, and this is a major part of the problem that is affecting normal people and leading to people not feeling safe in their own homes or going to the store. Even the police chiefs from across the country, including Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, have called for urgent reforms to Canada's bail system, specifically citing the need to better protect the public from high-risk, repeat violent offenders. The numbers don't lie. Violent severity index up roughly 30% over the last decade. Violent offenses up 55% since 2015. Extortion jumped 39% in a single year. Sexual assaults shot up 75%. Gun violence exploded 116%. In some cities, auto thefts are up. This has a rippling effect. It makes people in Canada no longer feel safe. Their possessions are no longer safe in their own driveways, example being your car. We even had the police in Toronto tell us to just leave the car keys at the door. That's absolutely insane. We work very hard for our items, especially in Canada, where things cost an exorbitant amount of money, to just hand off the keys to said violent criminal or potential violent criminal. It's really frustrating, and this is going to be a hard episode for me to keep my cool, because my goodness, do I get fired up over this stuff. But then you look at the sexual assaults shooting up 75%. That's astronomical and ridiculous. Because why should people not be safe? Why should we not be allowed to just exist without having to worry about being accosted by somebody who, can't control themselves? They're too animalistic? It makes zero sense. Absolutely zero sense to then turn around and hand them a lighter sentence. For what? Because they've proven that they are a valuable member of society by accosting people? Anyways, onward with this. The pandemic and the economy can get blamed for some of it, but the trends went into overdrive right after 2019. Coincidence? I think not. Then we can look at this little tidbit of information. Canada's worsening public safety was made evident again today through the Fraser Institute report into crime trends between United States and Canada. Between 2014 and 2022, the violent crime rate in Canada increased by 43.8%. to 434.1 violent crimes per 100,000 people. This means Canada's violent crime rate is 14% higher than that of the United States, which only recorded 380.7 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Now, that little tidbit's real rich when you actually think about how nasty everybody's getting towards America. The genuine disdain the liberals have been showing and the mass media has been showing towards America, yet their violent crime rate is lower than ours. There really needs to be some serious self-reflection here because it's getting a little ridiculous, if you will. And then you factor in things like this next case right here, and let's give this one a little listen.
Magabalan Teddy Jagada was convicted of the sexual assaults after a jury trial earlier this year. Court was told that he forced himself on two women on two separate occasions. In one case, he choked the woman to the point of almost unconsciousness, to where she saw stars. Both assaults happened on the St. FX campus in the residences there. The Crown had been asking for a sentence of up to 36 months, while Jagada's lawyer had asked that his client be able to serve his sentence in the community. In this case, that community would have been Fort McMurray, Alberta, where Jagada was living with his family. But Justice Frank Hoskins said the seriousness of these two assaults, which occurred 5 months apart in 2022 and 2023, required a custodial sentence. The judge is recommending that Jagada be sent to a prison in Alberta so he can be close to his family. But the judge pointed out that he doesn't have the authority to order that, he can only recommend. He also referred extensively to the impact of race and cultural assessment, or IRCA, that was prepared in this case. The report noted that Jagada didn't have culturally appropriate supports while in Antigonish and felt increasing pressure and isolation around the time of the attacks. He was compensating by using a lot of cannabis, the report quoted him as saying. Justice Hoskins said Jagada should be offered culturally sensitive counseling and support during his probation, including instruction on consent. The judge said if Jagada shows improvement in his probation, his lawyer can apply to the court to have the term shortened.
So, as you just saw with that video, December 2025, Nova Scotia Supreme Court, I am not going to be able to say his last name properly, Lahan Teddy Jagada, 25, former St. Francis Xavier football player, sexually assaulted two women on campus. One he choked nearly unconscious. Crown asks for 4 to 6 years. Judge Frank Hoskins gave him 2 years plus 3 years probation. Why? An impact of race and culture assessment, that's the IRCA they were talking about, said his immigrant background and lack of Black role models explained his poor decision making. The judge literally said, quote, but for the contents of the IRCA, this sentence would have been much higher, quote. So now basic human decency, like not raping or choking women, does not require a role model tutorial. Or at least it shouldn't. This is two-tier justice. Then we can move on to the case of Alice Michael Atwood from Grand Prairie, Alberta. On February 18th of 2025, a biological male who identifies as transgender, Alice Michael Atwood, then 35, former Alberta Health Service EMT, that's particularly a concerning piece here, stabs two children, ages 7 and 8. The 8-year-old girl's esophagus was severed. She was airlifted to Stollerly Children's Hospital. She needs a feeding tube for months. Atwood was arrested, charged with aggravated assault, then proceeded to post on social media admitting the stabbing, talks about therapy and being possessed. Family calls him manipulative and a continued risk. He's released on conditions within approximately 2 days. No remand. Still out on bail as of mid-February 2026 and has been live streaming, playing video games, and driving a hand-painted minivan that says every child matters. That's rich. That's really like a serious WTF. But he's been driving the minivan between BC and Alberta. The sentencing keeps getting adjourned. Grand Prairie Conservative MP Chris Warkentin called it exactly what it is: catch and release under C-5 and C-75. Quote, monsters like Alice Michael Atwood should not be allowed to roam our streets just 2 days after stabbing 2 children. It's absolutely insane. But here, watch this video.
A person from Grand Prairie is facing charges after 2 children were stabbed. Police say a 7- and 8-year-old were found with knife wounds in Grand Prairie last week. The child with more severe injuries was taken to the Stollery Children's Hospital. RCMP say Alice Michael Joseph Atwood has been charged with aggravated assault. Police are not disclosing Atwood's relationship to the children to protect their identity.
Wild that people are like, we're gonna find you and we're gonna get you. I'm like, yo, I am a mentally unstable person who lives in a minivan and I need a full psychiatric assessment. Like, I go around people when I have to. If I didn't have to, I wouldn't. I think it's safer for the community the less time people are around me. Why would you come up to someone who did what I did and harass them? People don't actually, but they threaten to, right? And I think that's just wild. Anyway, good morning. It's Alice Michael. Mwah. Peace, love, and unicorn.
So that's like another prime example of where things are really going awry. It's really not okay. And by releasing that person back out onto the streets 2 days, like seriously 2 days, that's it, we're re-traumatizing those children and that family. It's absolutely despicable. Who really is the victim in this situation? Because by treating that person who was the perpetrator of the crime with these soft gloves and this lackadaisical approach to violent offense like that, you're removing the victimhood from the actual victims, and then you're re-traumatizing them by forcing them to live in that type of fear, knowing that that person's out, knowing that that person can show back up at any moment in time, kick in their door. And I realize if you've never been in that situation, it's very abstract. But as somebody who has been in a situation, not quite that extreme by any means, but I've had to risk having my door kicked in because the police let the person back out. And I don't hold the police accountable by any means. They're the ones out on the streets catching these people. They're also suffering. But the judicial system is failing Canadians left, right, and center. You're putting people in harm's way for literally no reason to treat these criminals with these soft gloves. They are criminals. They actively made these choices. Another example is the case of little E from Welland, Ontario. Between August 30th and 31st in 2025, a registered sex offender, Daniel Senecal, 25, breaks into a home while parents were asleep and sexually assaults a 3-year-old girl. We refer to her as little E. There was serious injuries, ambulance, out of region hospital visit needed for obvious reasons. Senecal had already been convicted. That's really key here. Was already convicted in 2021 of sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. Released early in March of 2025 and was on probation. This is a prime example of why this soft on crime stuff fails, and it fails continuously, forcing more and more people to be victims for no reason, because it is not benefiting anybody to have this system, this catch and release system, actively working. Hundreds of us, I was one of them, protested outside the St. Catharines courthouse demanding no bail. After this attack, he did stay in custody through 2025 and early 2026, but the case really does perfectly illustrate the pipeline. Early release, repeat offense, another child's life is destroyed. And when they're talking about this type of destruction, like this really goes to the root, to the heart of it. That child's life is forever changed. There is no going back. And the child before this child, little E, the little boy, their life is forever changed. There is no going back. They will forever have to deal with the trauma. They will always have to deal with the memories, with the fear. And this person gets what? Released back out to do it again. And the Canadian justice system is not learning. They're not repealing these. They're not actively doing anything to improve the safety of Canadians. Instead, they're actively working against it because the Conservatives have put forth motions to try and reinstate mandatory minimums, to try and keep Canadians safe, and yet the Liberals voted it down. For what purpose? Why do they want us to be a bunch of sitting ducks? Here's a video of the Daniel Senecal case.
In Welland, Ontario, anger is boiling over. Consider this busy street where a noose now hangs as if to warn of a lynching. The target, Daniel Senecal, already a convicted sex offender. He's now charged in another sexual assault, this time involving a 3-year-old girl.
How difficult has this been for your family?
This case specifically, it just brings up a lot of memories.
This man's nephew was sexually assaulted by Senecal in 2021. To protect the child, we're not identifying his family, shocked by the new allegations.
He was definitely let out too early. We thought that once he went through the whole process and that he was under probation and we can kind of have a little bit of closure and move on.
Police say this time the attacker broke into a toddler's home across town, choking and assaulting her.
I mean, put these people away, man, forever.
Petition to the government of Canada, whereas...
The case setting off this protest outside the courthouse, demanding the accused be denied bail and justice for the girl known as Little E.
I felt helpless when I heard, and I get emotional, when I heard what happened to Little E.
That case and that story is a prime example of something that could have been avoided. Little E didn't have to get hurt. If the Canadian justice system had just kept that person in jail where they belonged for assaulting a little boy previously. It's sick and it's disturbing and it truly needs to end. It needs to stop. We cannot keep subjecting children and women and men to violent repeat offenders for what? For literally no reason. There is no real reason because all of the evidence thus far is proving it's a failed experiment. It is absolutely failed. And all it is doing is making more and more new victims out of normal citizens who are just trying to live their life. They're not doing anything, especially in the case of these children who are being victimized by these monsters. Then you got to look at the other side for when the victims are fighting back. That's a whole other area of WTF is going on in Canada. We have Section 34 of the Criminal Code says you can use reasonable force, but reasonable is up for debate. And that doesn't even make sense because when you're coming at it from a psychological perspective, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're in that situation where you have the survival instincts kicking in, that you're not going to stop and think, oh, is this a reasonable amount of force? Oh, am I hitting them appropriately for what they're doing to me? Oh, are they actually going to use that weapon on me or are they just holding it for a fashion show? Like these are not the thoughts that are going to go through any normal person's head when they're in the situation that they are about to be attacked, are being attacked, or their home has been invaded. It's not reasonable for the Canadian justice system to require the victim of a perpetrator to consciously think through their actions before they respond. That's not how survival instincts work. That's not at all how the human brain works in these situations. And then you look at even pepper spray. Pepper spray is illegal for self-defense against humans. It's a prohibited weapon. Carry it, use it on somebody who's trying to attack you, who's accosted you. Maybe they're twice your size. Maybe you're a woman and you're walking out at night. You're walking home from work, something along those lines. You can't use it. You can't even carry it if that's your plan. You will get a weapons charge, and it's a big one. It's up to like 10 years in jail for using pepper spray to defend yourself. That it's non-lethal. Like, there's, again, no justification for this. You can use it on a bear, you can use it on a dog, but on a human who's trying to attack you? No. That person gets empathy. That person gets the sympathy and the understanding because they cannot control their animal instincts. But the bear, no. The bear does not get that sympathy. The bear must control their animal instincts or they're allowed to get pepper sprayed. Make it make sense. The sexual assaults are up 75% since 2015. Like, is that really a shocker? Women don't have anything. If they use a pepper spray, they get fined. If they self-defense, they risk getting charged. If they're women, they tend to be smaller. The entire thing is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it is an absolute dumpster fire. And then you've got men who are also being victimized by these same types of violent offenders. Like, look at the Lindsay, Ontario case from August of 2025. That homeowner wakes up to a 41-year-old intruder on probation. There's another key. Armed with a crossbow, the homeowner fights back, subdues him, allegedly causes life-threatening injuries, and the police charge the homeowner with aggravated assault with a weapon. The intruder gets the sympathy. Like, it does not make any sense. Premier Doug Ford called it outrageous. Pierre Poilievre's stand on guard proposal would fix this. If someone breaks into your home and threatens you, force is presumed reasonable. The U.S. states with the Castle Doctrine saw home invasions drop. Here's a video on the Lindsay home for a refresher.
When an intruder last week busted through that window, breaking into a second-floor apartment, the fight that ensued set off a national debate about self-defense and reasonable force. Court documents say the alleged intruder, Michael Kyle Breen, was out on probation and armed with a crossbow. The tenant, Jeremy David McDonald, allegedly fought back with a knife. Now he faces charges of aggravated assault and assault with a weapon.
Responding with a knife would seem to be, just looking at the weapons, a proportionate response. But we need to know more.
The incident in Lindsay, Ontario sparked outrage across Canada, lighting up social media with comments like, "The owner did what's required," and "Police didn't think this one through."
You should be in serious danger if you go into someone's house illegally and try to harm them.
We got to get tough on this crime. People are fed up, and I'm wishing all the best for our friend in Lindsay.
It's just ridiculous. So that ties right back into what I was just saying. Homeowner fought back because they were invaded with a crossbow, and they end up getting charged because they used the wrong weapon or not. Like, it has to go through court. So now the homeowner gets traumatized, victimized by being invaded. Their home was invaded. And then the police charge them for what? Being at home in bed and being accosted? Like, it does not make sense. If a perpetrator goes into your home, then that perpetrator is actively making a choice to put their own life at risk to enter your home. That's the reality of it. They're making a conscious choice. The homeowner was also making a conscious choice to not break the law. They were in their home. They were existing, sleeping, whatever they were doing, it's irrelevant. They were in their home. They didn't ask for this. They didn't start this. It came to them. And the police charging the homeowner in this case is ridiculous. It never should have been. We need castle law. And then you turn around and you look at how Pierre is trying. He's trying to bring forth these types of legislations because everything is absolutely out of control here now. Here's a video of Pierre, what I'm talking about.
Conservatives sending a message about self-defense.
Your home is your castle. and you have the right to defend your family in your home.
Pierre Poilievre wants the criminal code to be changed to make it simpler, he argues, for Canadians to make snap judgments on how to deal with home invaders.
Two conditions. If someone enters your home illegally and uninvited, and two, you reasonably believe they're a threat to your family, then it is assumed that all the force you use against that person is reasonable and legal.
Right now, an act of defense must be deemed reasonable by the courts, which consider factors like the nature of the threat and the history of the people involved. Poilievre's proposal comes in the wake of a high-profile home invasion in
We really do need something like castle law. It does not make any sense to have things running the way they are. And then you have the other side where things just get like a complete clown show. That there is that water gun addition to Canada's justice system in Simcoe, Ontario. This was back in September of 2024. Her name was Wendy Washik, 58, accidentally sprays her neighbor with a child's toy water gun during a backyard water fight with the kids. She was then charged with assault with a weapon. The charge was later dropped with a peace bond. The system will criminalize a mom with a squirt gun, but release the guy who stabbed two kids. Like, really? It makes zero sense. Like, absolutely no sense to be made here. It's just insanity. Woman facing assault with a weapons charge says she was having a water gun fight with a child. This is a lady. Big, hardened criminal, obviously. Like, are you kidding me right now? OPP says police determined two people were involved in a dispute that resulted in a victim being physically assaulted, but no injuries reported. Washik says she was having a playful water gun fight with a child at a party when she accidentally sprayed water on the neighbor's chest. My goodness gracious. Really? That deserves an arrest and a charge? Regardless that it was later dropped, that's irrelevant. Her reputation, she was an EA, I believe, if memory serves correct, and her reputation is now tarnished and charged for a water gun. It's a toy that we give toddlers to play with, for crying out loud. That gets the charge. It makes no sense. Our entire justice system has been flipped upside down, and we truly are at a point where we need to course correct. We really need to course correct, because as it stands right now, we have light sentences, quick bail, which is only equaling out to more predators on our street, which are then creating more victims than personal defenders are catching charges, because the courts are releasing these criminals back out onto the streets, which is now cycling into public terror, public fear, because of a constant inflow of violent repeat offenders. It makes no sense. None. We are spending billions of dollars on foreign programs while repeat offenders are cycling through. Why not take that money, invest it into the judicial system, put it back into programs, jails, things of that nature, to get these people into a right mindset? If they're have addiction issues, get them into rehab programs. If they have anger issues, get them into anger management programs. I really don't care what the program is. Take the money that we give away to foreign countries, reinvest it back into the Canadian judicial system, repeal these crazy bills that are going on, and actually fix it. It's not that complicated. Reinstate the mandatory minimums for repeat violent offenders, reverse these bail for serious crimes, legalize pepper spray. This is outrageous. Women are no longer safe to walk on our streets because the court is just putting these perpetrators back out on the streets. And then you're literally like kneecapping women by not allowing them to use anything. We need to pass Castle Doctrine style protections 3 strikes rule for violent repeat offenders, stop the 2-tier nonsense. It's not that hard to fix these problems. We just actually need politicians who have the motivation to. And if they don't have the motivation to do this, then we need to know why. And we need honest journalists to ask these questions. No more soft play, no more tiptoeing around the issues. Actually ask straight up, blunt questions. Why are you refusing to course correct on these bills? It's that simple, because at this point, Canadians are being forced to be sitting ducks and think before they respond when they're being accosted. We deserve better. We deserve a justice system that puts victims first and predators behind bars. If you're angry about this as I am, you should be. And you are completely justified in your anger. Contact your MP, demand better. Let them know, like, you want castle law, you want stand your ground laws, you want these bills repealed. We need to get loud as Canadians, because this apathetic attitude that we have taken on is really coming full circle to bite us in the butt, and it needs to stop. The system is protecting the wrong people at this point, and we really do need it to protect the victims. Well, thanks for listening. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own stories if you want to. And I'll see you next time for another episode of Salty Saturdays. I'm out.